coaches help you save time. Okay, this person knows this one thing better than me, and they're going to help me get there 10 times faster. And then what I've learned from coaches as well is like I've used them to help my team. So my team won't have a specific skill set. And so we'll bring in coaches and say, teach that skill set to them and tell us how to do this part of it rather than going out and hiring a whole new person. So saving time on coaches is huge. All right, we are live, and if you're listening, it really helps us out. If you could just leave a quick review, it takes you 2 seconds, and you can just leave us a star review, whatever you're listening on, social media, any of the podcast hosting platforms, and you leave us a quick review. It'll really help us out. Please don't ignore me, all right? Just go do it. All right, thank you. So I am excited because today I have Brad Ball, and he's a CEO of Liquis Digital, and I am really, really excited because I've been talking with him on a regular basis about his business, and I'm looking forward to learning more about his business today and what he's doing well, what he's learned from the past, and he's very, very insightful, and he really pays attention to what's happening around him. So I'm excited for that. Now, I'm going to tell you what I think your business is, Brad, and then you tell me what I got right, what I got wrong, and what I left out. So
cool.
From what I understand, you run an agency. You've been running it for about 14 years, and you are a digital marketing agency. And right now you're trying to niche down your agency. And sometimes that's hard. It's hard to niche down, period. But sometimes it's hard to niche down when you've been doing something for a long time in one way, and you're working through that and trying to solve that. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? And what did I leave out?
Yeah, no, that's totally right. So we've been doing this for 14 years, soon to be 15 in August. And we've never niched down to anything. We've always been web design, digital marketing for really anyone out there. So in the last year, we've really focused on, okay, let's try a new direction and let's niche down. We've chosen to niche down into the dental industry. We've worked with multiple dentists. And it's been a journey, and it is. I feel like it's harder to make the transition when you've been doing it one way for so long. It's really challenging, but
it is.
We're getting there.
I've been there. Literally, we had a bunch of dentists that we worked with, but we had probably $100,000 a month in recurring revenue of non-dentists, a lot of car washes, things like that. So it was a hard transition. We had to really bite the bullet when we did it, and it was very, very scary. So I commend you for even taking that step, because I really believe firmly it is the right step. So before we dive into that, tell me a little bit about your company, how big you guys are, revenue, team size, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So we are, like we said, 14 years old. We're small. We're small, family owned and operated. So we have a core of 4. It's me, my wife, my stepson, and my stepdaughter. That's our core 4. And we have 5 other external people that work with us and for us. So that is pretty much our team. We've, through the years, have had multiple people in and out of the company. We've at one point, I believe, had 4 full-time employees along with us 4, and then some externals. So we had grown a little bit, and now we've kind of shrunk back down, which is kind of weird. But so that's where we are as far as size. Revenue wise, we're right about the 300,000 mark a year. We're trying to get that to be mostly reoccurring revenue. We still have a lot of that is project-based work.
So it expires, right? So you get paid for this long, and then it goes away. Okay. Exactly.
So our main focus in scaling is really trying to get more of that reoccurring revenue in the door. And through the years, I mean, it's definitely grown. And to be honest, that's our backbone. That's been the thing in our business that's allowed me to really be able to sleep at night, because when it was just all projects, it was either feast or famine. It was peaks and valleys, and it can be a nightmare. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for a minute, because it can be a nightmare, right? So one of the hard things about owning an agency is not knowing where the food's coming from tomorrow, right? And so when you have these projects, it's like you go into sales mode. So you land a project,
and you're like,
Yeah.
yes, we got it. All right, now let's keep it. And we got to, let's make sure we do a good job because we want to make these people happy. But then towards the end of that project, you're like, we don't have work and I have bills to pay and I have things like that. So then you go back into sales mode again. And so you're almost on this like, and I know like real estate agents deal with this and other people in other industries deal with that. So walk me through some of that, how you deal with that, and then how you build out your recurring revenue side.
For the longest time, it was just project based, right? So, and we were just that. We were on the roller coaster. We'd put all of our effort into getting the work. We would start to get all this work in. It almost like stockpiled. The leads would stockpile. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, they'd all want to like convert at once. So now we have all of these projects to do. Yeah. And then now we're like working on the projects. And like you said, the well runs dry. That's this roller coaster. We did that for years, and that's the ugly side. So then the next step we did, mostly web design has always kind of been like our bread and butter. What we started to do was like, okay, well, let's start adding in the hosting and this website maintenance. It just made sense with what we were doing. Yeah. And I didn't really anticipate it being that big of a thing, but I was like, well, anything will help. Next thing you know, hosting is one of our like easiest return on investments, right? Like there's like minimal work involved with hosting websites, and it's such a sticky thing. Like when someone's hosting with you, they're not going to leave. So hosting and maintenance is the easiest piece of recurring revenue that we added on to our website services. And now
there's almost no reason not to do that, right? Yeah. If you're a young entrepreneur, like why wouldn't you do that? You're already setting it up for them anyways.
Yes, exactly. And they want you to do that.
Well, yeah, because most of the people they don't know, they don't understand, right?
No.
Like they don't. Go ahead.
And they want to. They come into it like, oh yeah, you need a website that we can update and we can maintain and we can do all this stuff. But what they don't realize as an entrepreneur themselves, they don't have time to deal with that. They're not an expert in that, and they don't do it. So they want someone else to do it. They want to know someone else is handling it. It's the easiest move to make.
So that's the first layer. Like if you're an agency, find that like easy, low hanging fruit that just makes sense for that next step. Which if you build websites, it's hosting. There's other services out there as well. But then, so what was the next step of recurring revenue for you?
Yeah, so we played around with this idea of having this membership, right? So you paid us almost like a retainer. So you had us for, let's say, 2 hours a month to do whatever. Maybe it's design brochures, maybe it's to create digital ads, whatever you needed, email marketing, whatever. That you had us. So it's almost like a retainer, and that was like at a discount rate of our hourly rate. And it worked kind of well. The problem with that is people were tracking hours, and that never seems to be good, right? Because now they're like, well, we didn't use that many hours, or how many hours is it going to take for this? And it just didn't really work that well.
It's a commodity. Yeah. I think the reason for that is it's you position it. I love the idea, by the way. It's a great idea. Right. But if you don't position it correctly, you become a commodity, right? And almost like a lawyer or someone who comes and fixes your house, and they say, hey, I'm going to build you this thing by the hour. And you really don't want to be a commodity. You really want to be more of a specialized person that's providing this high value that like, I'm happy to pay you that money. So that's interesting. So did you pivot away from that?
Yeah, we shut that down. It just became too much to manage. It wasn't really scalable either, because you're just trading time for dollars, and that wasn't good. So it wasn't scalable, and it really wasn't adding the value that we wanted to add. So we got away from that, and we started to, and we were already doing these things like the digital marketing stuff, like running ads for people. We were doing it for ourselves, paid advertising, Google Analytics or Google AdWords, just all of these other digital marketing things, email marketing, all of this stuff. We were already doing it. So we're just like, well, why aren't we just like doing that? So, I think with any new service, any new thing you start to do, you kind of like need to build that confidence. And like we started off small. I think we got someone in the door, and we're like, well, how about we just do $500 a month, and, we'll do, whatever you need. And we probably lost our butts off on that job just because, the amount of work that we were doing for the money. But it was our foot in the door for us to start creating that service. So now that's really our backbone. That's really what we're driving toward now, even more so. And
that's the
doing
lead
the
gen,
marketing.
right?
Lead generation. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really, I think the reason that that's so powerful is that's why people really market anyways, right? So why do people send emails? Lead gen.
Yeah,
Why do
lead
people
gen. Yeah.
build websites? It's lead gen. Like at the end of the day, that's why they're paying you this money to do these services. So it's the next logical step. So I think hosting, then some kind of service package if you can make that work for your business, and then really the cream of the crop is lead gen. So that's where you're at now.
Yeah.
And now so now that you've figured that out and you're generating some revenue consistently, why are you niching down to dental then?
Yeah. Okay, because number one is when you start doing this digital marketing for one company in one industry, and then another company in another industry, and then another company in another industry, all three of them are different. And everybody has a different need. Everything is so different. You can't it's like so much work to work with a CBD e-commerce store, and then another type of e-commerce store. Like it's just all over the place, and there's so much different work that you have to do. You can't scale it. Yeah. It's so different from one job to the next.
Yeah, totally. The best way I've ever heard this explained is, so pretend you own a car plant and you make cars and you're producing cars, and you produce, a sedan and a family car, and they're all gas powered cars. And then all of a sudden you say, all right, we're now going to make battery operated cars. Well, you're still a car factory producing cars, but your whole infrastructure's different. Yes. And as an entrepreneur, a lot of times we go, oh, it's easy. That's easy. No, it's not easy. It's actually very complex. There's a lot of problems there. And so what ends up happening if you don't niche down first is that you'll just be mediocre for a lot of people. And then, and then you don't get the result. That's what we did, is we worked with all these different people, and we weren't really great at anybody. But once we niched down, we got better and better and better, and we could actually track it. And then the other thing that I've seen, Brad, and I'd be interested in your opinion on this, I feel like it's easier to become the expert, because you can just be like, hey, I'm this guy who does dental marketing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's much faster. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And so that's very interesting, because I'm in the middle of that pivot, right? So all of my marketing messaging out there is really general. It's not so far niched down to dental, but 100%, like it's so much easier to be the expert when that's what you do. People are just going to view you as that expert. I mean, if you were to go to a surgeon and you needed a surgery done, you're not gonna go to a general surgeon. You're gonna go to that specific surgeon, and you're gonna pay more for that specific surgeon.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then and that's what happened to us. I mean, we became the leaders in a space, a very niche space. And I wouldn't even say we're in dental. We're in like a subgroup of dental, right? So we're even niched down further. And every time we've niched down, we've actually grown. So I know it's scary, but it pays off. Now, why dental? Why did you pick dental? Why not some other industry?
Right. So sometimes I question myself on that. But dental is because we've worked in dental. We've gotten good results in the dental field. So we know we have a model. We know we have a working model that we've proven. We have a lot of like contacts already in the dental space, so that definitely helps out. And the other piece is the quantity of dentists. Like the industry is huge, which also means there's a lot of competition as well. And then also the amount of that we need to charge for our services, and they can afford that. So I think that's a big piece. Like if we really niche down to some obscure industry, well, like let's say roofers, I don't know, I haven't done the research, but they probably don't have the revenue. Well,
I'll give you a good example. So the reason that I'm in dental and not in chiropractic is because it costs about the same amount of money to generate a lead as it does for general dentistry and chiropractic. But chiropractors don't have as much money. They don't have the ROI from that patient. So when that patient walks through the door, they might only spend $100, where at the dental office, they're spending $300 or $400 on general dentistry. Well, that's a huge difference, right? Like which one's going to be able to afford the marketing services? I think that's really important when you take into consideration niching down. What are you good at? And then what's your ROI? Can you make it profitable for you? And really, is it profitable for the client as well? Are you going to be able to produce leads, and are they going to be able to afford them?
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome.
The other industry we were looking at was nonprofits, and largely because out of all of the work we've ever done, it seems like a lot of it, I don't know if the majority, has been nonprofits. They're fun to work with, so we haven't gone down that road, but we're going dental.
Nonprofits is interesting because I've had a couple of people reach out to me and say, I got an agency around nonprofits or churches, and it's like, I get that, but money's really hard for those groups.
Yeah.
But when they get government, some of the nonprofits, when they get like funds or people give money, then it's a little bit easier. But you have to have that in. Like, you need to be able to have that in. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think when you go into the nonprofit space, it's kind of like you just said, either they're going to be tight on budget or they're going to have government funding. And I really haven't done enough research into finding like where the government funded ones are. I mean, we've worked with some really large nonprofits, some that have in campaigns that have been linked to CDC and some really big things.
So they had funding, right?
More funding than you would even think. That I'm like, wow, these guys are some of the biggest campaigns, and it's like crazy.
So there's a niche. That's a niche right there. Like, if you could figure out that funding part of who has money to spend at these nonprofits, and you could figure that out, that's a niche in itself. I'm going to pivot on you really quickly. So if we could go back, Brad, 10 years, what is something that you know now that you wish you would have known when you started?
Yeah. So the thing I wish I would have known was how much I was in the way of business growth. Like, I think hands down, the hardest thing for myself to overcome was the fact that I was holding the company back because I was the worker bee in the company and not the working on the company. So
how do you
I wish
that?
I would have learned that lesson sooner, way sooner.
How did you solve that? Like, how did you work through that?
I started to see it. I think I forget, was the book the E-Myth or Built to Sell. I can't remember which one, but E-Myth, it was one of those kind of like, okay, like open that, like shine that light on that. And I was like, yeah, maybe that's not me, and then I finally got humble and put my ego aside and realized that, it's 100% me. It's 100% me. And then I got a business coach and she confirmed it and we worked through it.
So you paid somebody money to tell you that you were the problem. So I want to go down that business coach road, but let me touch on something really quick. So the E-Myth, if you haven't read that and you're starting your agency, please go read that book. And basically the nuts and bolts of it is that there's a baker, and the baker loves baking pies, and they're really good at it. And then they go, well, I should obviously start a business selling pies, right? That's the next logical step. However, she didn't realize that she hated HR, she hated managing people, she hated managing money, she couldn't manage her team. She kept losing team members. And what the book talks about is being good as a technician doesn't mean that you're necessarily supposed to run a business. And if you want to run a business, that's okay, but you can't be the technician and the one running the business. You have to bring in help. And that's what Brad just defined. And I was the same way. I was the one running the ads. I was the one running the sales calls. And so you become the bottleneck, and you need to bring in people to support you in these different areas, or else you're just going to fail. Brad, really quick. So you said that you hired a coach. So I know a lot of people, first of all, there's like a bazillion fake coaches on TikTok, right? So I see people who are like 10 years old and they're like, I'm your life coach. And I'm like, bro, you're not, you've just barely started life yourself. Right. So how did you find a coach? Why did you find a coach? And walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, it was, in one of the valleys in our business, I was about ready to pull out. I was done. I was burnout. I was toast. I had reached the fail point. Keep in mind, this was years and years in, over 10 years of just grinding. And then, Finally I had a friend who has an agency, different type of agency, more of like a app development, big company, and he had major growth over a short period of time, and he recognized my struggles, recommended her, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and that really was a referral. I didn't go research a bunch of other people. I saw she was good.
Provider
We had a
results,
good
yeah.
connection. But my recommendation would be to interview people. Don't just find someone off of TikTok. Not that they're not on TikTok.
Yeah.
Do your research. Do your research. I know for me, what I liked is we had a session before we even like committed, so that way we could get a feel for each other, and I could be a right fit for her. She could be a right fit for me.
And how much did you pay? Like, how much was it?
Yeah, I think it was the first time. I want to say 6,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it was 6-ish. Maybe I can't quite remember.
So a big investment though. It's not a small investment.
Yeah. No. You want it to be an investment though. You want it to kind of like shake you a little bit, like, ooh, do I want to spend this money? Because if you don't, you're not spending enough. You have to be invested into it. If you're not paying for it, you're not invested into it. If you're not invested into it, then you're gonna waste each other's time.
Yeah. And so something for me and coaches help you save time. So if you like, what I've learned is, okay, this person knows this one thing better than me, and they're going to help me get there 10 times faster. And then what I've learned from coaches as well is like, I've used them to help my team. So my team won't have a specific skill set. And so we'll bring in coaches and say, teach that skill set to them and tell us how to do this part of it, rather than going out and hiring a whole new person. So saving time on coaches is huge. Interviewing, that's a great tip on interviewing. I would say talk to several of them before you jump into that. And then said that you said that you were burnt out. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what were you burnt out on?
I would have to think back because I don't really know. I think it was really just spinning your wheels, right? Like, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're trying to get to this place and you just aren't getting there. And after, so many years of trying and grinding and then having other people on your team that are depending on you, and it's like, I don't know, like at some point you just throw your hands up. And I mean, like I said, it's almost been 15 years. There's been a lot of down. There's been times where I don't know there's been a handful of times where like, is this even really working? Is this worth it?
Yep. Me too. I've been there too. I think one of the things that I've identified for myself to help me through those times is I've noticed when I get burnt out and when I want to like quit is when I don't have a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I can't see how this is going to end, and I don't want to live like this anymore. So somehow you have to create a hole that you can see the light and you go, okay, it's only 6 more months or only 3 more months, or we just have to get this training in and then I'll be done with this portion of it. I think that's crucial in your business, especially early on.
I recently came out of this place, like, so we have just are in this pivot, right, of niching down into dental, and I kind of got burnt out, and I realized that is because I didn't reset the vision. Right? Like, we didn't have the clear vision before we made this pivot, and I didn't have the vision set. What was my vision for the team, for myself? Once I redefined that, my burnout just disappeared. Like,
because you're working towards something.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The task, it wasn't the task, because I was getting bored with the task. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just doing this thing. I'm not getting there. But it's the small little steps. And if you have the vision, that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Wow, that's so good. So I was just down in Phoenix. I know you live down there. I didn't get to catch it, but we went up Camelback Mountain. And as we're climbing up it, at first we were at a really fast pace because it was kind of flat, And then we started like climbing, and you're like using all fours, and it gets really, really hard. And every time I thought I was going to get to the top, it wasn't, right? So there's like 5 or 6 times where you're like, this is the top right here. And then it's not. So I actually started getting a little bit discouraged, and I started asking the people down, hey, how much farther is it? And so because I couldn't see the end, my brain started playing tricks with me. Like, is this another hour of this? Like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. But once someone was like, 10 more minutes, you're right there. 15 more minutes, you're getting really close. It was like, okay, cool. I can do that. And when you start early on, you have to have a vision, especially when you bring people around you, but even for yourself. Now, I want to ask you, Brad, do you, I've heard different opinions of this. Some people love bringing in their friends and family, working with them. Other people are like, never do that. How do you manage that? How did you work through that?
I am blessed, actually. So it's working with family, and you would think that wouldn't work. And I think you have to have the right family to do so. I don't think that's for everybody. I would really caution people to take that step. I think that can be a very dangerous road to go down if you're really trying to build a business, especially with friends. I've done some businesses with friends. I would never suggest that. That's always a bad idea. So, but with family, honestly, one of the biggest things we do is we really don't talk shop outside of work hours. Like we shut it down, and it's hard to do. But
because you work from home too, right?
Yep. We do have an office. Yep, but we do mostly work from home.
Yeah, so that's hard to do when you live and you. Yeah. So how do you manage that? How do you turn it off?
I don't know. I guess it's just kind of this unspoken rule. Like we just shut it down, and we don't talk about work after hours, because there's always stuff going on. We just make sure we don't. And then sometimes we do, but if someone's not wanting to talk about it, they're like, all right, well, let's just schedule a time later during work time to talk about this. So it's really, I think that's the biggest thing is not talking shop after hours, like shutting it off, and having times where your business and your family.
Yeah.
The other hard part about it too is I'm like the leader of the company. I'm also like the stepdad so it's like when you don't want to parent inside of your company. So
yeah, no.
there's always that. So I'm very intentional and aware of that. So yeah, I mean, that's a very unique situation, but
it is. Yeah. I've burnt people out. I'm notoriously, my motor goes all the time, and I can't stop it. Right. Yeah. There is no like, oh, just turn it off. Like I'm thinking all the time. And so you're 100% right. Like you have to be so intentional as an entrepreneur, because otherwise, not most people who are working for you are not entrepreneur minded. So they don't have that motor, and they're not thinking the same way. Like they are turning it off, and you're still thinking about it and running. And I've learned when I was younger, man, people were just like, I'm tired of working with you. I don't want to work with you anymore. Like move me to another area or get me away, because
that's awesome.
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about dental marketing 24/7. Right. And I think that's huge.
I'll get stuck in that. Sometimes my wife will be like, all right, I'm done talking about this. And I'm like, okay, sorry. I thought we were on the same page on that one, but
yeah, 100%.
I totally get it. And then, because then sometimes people want to talk to me about stuff, and I'm just like, you know what, I just need to relax right now.
That's good. So tell me about your vision. You said you had to reset the vision. So what's the vision going forward? If I was on your team, what does the next 6 months look like?
So the next 6 months looks like us scaling into dental and being a $500,000 recurring revenue a year. So that's our kind of short-term goal. Our long-term goal, actually, at the end of 2023, is our mark, and that is to be a 7-figure, efficient, scalable, and fun agency.
Let's go. And fun. Tell me about the fun part.
So the fun part, like we started the company, I've always like, how fun would it be to have a marketing company? Like you see them, they're just fun. They're like having like games. They're like, it's all just fun. And that's the environment that I want. I want a fun environment. Like these days, before it was the office space. Yeah. Now the office space doesn't really exist as much as it used to. But having that fun environment where you're playing, and the work we're doing is fun work. It's design work, it's creative. We're helping businesses grow. I mean, it's just fun. So that's the fun part. If we're not having fun, then what's the point? Then it's just another job.
Yep, 100%. So you're at 300,000 a year. So you want to get to about 500,000 by the end of this year, and then double next year. So give me some of the give me some of the things that you're thinking about in your head. Like these are the things I have to get done to be able to get to that goal.
Yeah. So I feel like there's so many things, and it's just going to be baby steps, right? Right now, our biggest thing is finding referral partners, and that's a big driver that we've gotten from you, actually. So we're looking for those referral partners out there that can, be that source
How's that
new
going?
leads.
Like, how's the connections going? Are you getting anything from it?
Yeah,
Where are you at?
it's good. It's good. It's maybe not as fast as I anticipated. However, that is just because of whatever my expectation was. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's going really well.
One of the things that happened for us is we got somebody who referred us clients, and it was just somebody who they were a consultant, and they referred a couple. They kind of tested us out, and then once they said, okay, you can actually do this, they referred us like, I don't even know. What they did is they sent out an email to their group, and they said, hey, if you need help with your marketing, you need to talk to these guys. We literally got like 50 leads like in a week, and we closed like half of them. So we added, like, the company jumped in MRR like insanely, like just like that. And it didn't really cost us anything. It didn't really, it wasn't like any marketing budget. They were all warm leads, so they were easy to close. So it happens really, really fast. Where are you at in that process?
So right now it's just really finding those referral partners. And I feel like it's getting the referral partner and then fostering that relationship, right? Because it's one thing to say, have the meeting and say, yeah, okay, we're going to refer each other. But then it's another thing to do it. Yeah. And you have to foster that relationship and build that relationship. And I think a little bit of that is time and staying connected and sending them referrals, sending them reason to send you referrals. So I think that's where we're at right now, right? We have a handful and we're building those relationships.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Something's going to hit. So something you feel like something's going to hit here.
Right. I don't doubt it. Right. Like, I'm not sitting back like, I don't know. I'm not questioning. It's what I'm questioning is when, right? So I'm kind of like, okay, it's not happening yet, but it is going to happen. So what's my next step? Because
what kind of business
we do have that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
When we do have it come in, like my next problem is going to be getting the work done, right? Oh, okay, now we got to hire people, and now we got to get people going. Oh, wait, I don't have my SOP set up. Oh, wait, so all of these things are going to start snowballing fast. And so I'm trying to think ahead, right? As trying to be experienced entrepreneur, thinking ahead of future problems. But
what kind of businesses are you looking at as far as referral partners?
Right now, most of them are service the dental industry through their own like apps and softwares. So like chat widgets, that automated chat widget kind of stuff, dental membership, company that assists dental offices with setting up, in-house dental memberships and that kind of stuff.
Here's one that you should go out and get. So those are all great, like, and keep fostering those because those will turn into business. But I think for faster business, if you could get a coach or a consultant, because here's the interesting thing about the coaches and consultants. They are paid. We just talked about them, right? They're paid $5,000-$10,000 a month to be there. And then they go, okay, now you need marketing and here's who you talk to. I think that's a really low friction way to get some more referral partners.
I love that. And let's see. Okay. So my tip for everyone out there that's an entrepreneur, get a coach, but also get a mentor. Like Gary is my mentor. So those types of tips. So I look at like my coach is kind of like my mindset coach, my person that like helps me with my mindset and like where I'm at internally and with the business. And then the mentor that's in the business has done the things you want to do, where you're going to get very specific advice and techniques and direction.
That's really good. I've never thought about it exactly that way, but it's very, very true. And a lot of times too, I think people try to get mentors that are like, well, I'm an entrepreneur, so I want Elon Musk as my mentor. Well, Elon Musk isn't really going to be able to help us too much, right? Like he's building rockets and stuff like that. Yeah. You want somebody who's in the thing that you're doing and not so crazy far ahead of you that you can't understand what they're talking about.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
So you said, so you're at 300,000, you want to go to $1 million, so you're going to triple over the next year and a half. You said first thing you're going to do, referral partners. What's some of the other things that you need to take care of along the way?
Well, I alluded to it a little bit ago, but getting those processes in place, because we don't really have them right now, right? So the SOPs, the when we need to start handing off more work and bringing in more resources and onboarding new people into our company, like we don't necessarily, since we're so small, have that in place. So that will be the next thing, because once we have all of this work, we're gonna have to get more help to get it done.
Yeah.
So that
how
will
do you
be.
plan? How do you plan on like doing that? Like, so let's say what somebody reaches out and says, "Hey, I got 3 dental clients for you." Like, how would you tackle that?
So I would tackle this as like, since I don't have the processes developed, I would myself walk through the process and document it, right? So I need to document the steps, the things that need to be done, document the things that people might be missing in their, process. So as they go through it. So maybe it's not in every single step, but it's the kind of high level, don't forget this thing, right? So just documenting that step by step.
Which is huge.
Yeah. Get video, like, using Loom. We use Asana as well. But those 2 things, and then also just having a good set of documentation.
That's awesome. Is there anything else that we didn't cover? I know you've learned a lot of things through the years of being in business. Anything else that you would say to a young entrepreneur or somebody who's starting or trying to grow their agency, or even at that quitting point that you're like, here's some things that helped me along the way?
Yeah. So I think one of the big things that I see, and I think this is going to be even more of an issue with new entrepreneurs these days, is being patient, right? So like I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. Like there was nothing fast happening, growing up. Like I didn't grow up in a fast time. So compared to now, right?
Yeah.
Like now if I order something on Amazon, if I don't get it in the next day or 2, I'm just like, what is going on? So being patient, because it might be tomorrow, it might be next week that you have your breakthrough and that you take off. But if you quit today, you'll never know. And I think a lot of people, go 100 miles an hour and then doesn't happen because they're measuring some metric that doesn't really matter and give up. Giving up too quickly.
Yeah,
I think is a big
like that
thing.
because when we start off as entrepreneurs, to stay alive, like day 1, year 1, to stay alive, you have to be like high motor, like just kind of forget like, okay, I'm going to knock on 100 doors and try to get, new clients or whatever and get a lot of no's. And you kind of have to have that high motor. But then that also works against you later in business because you build the business, you have these other people you're working with, and you kind of have to turn that off. Learn to turn it off, and then to go deal with people. And so that's a great point. I that's something I'm constantly working on, that like I see stuff and I'm like, oh, I want to say something.
Ooh, yeah.
But it doesn't serve me right then to say that, right? And it won't help our team.
Yeah, totally. I think the other big thing too is learning to fail, right? Mm-hmm. I know for me, I struggle with this a lot. Like I don't want to fail. So it's myself learning that it's okay to fail and to expect to fail. And the fact is the faster you fail, the faster you're going to grow. So, and the faster you let your team fail, the faster they're going to grow. And I think that's the big thing, is learning that actually failure is required. If you're coming into if you think about the gym, if you go to the gym and you're lifting weights and you're working out to fail. Like when you fail, that's a good thing in the gym, because hey, you finally like hit your top level, and that means you're pushed yourself to a point where you're going to grow. Now when you go back and do it again, you're going to get stronger and better. It's the same thing in business. If you fail, you're actually growing. So reframing the fail part.
100%. If you don't get this down, you won't be successful. You have to be comfortable with failing, and you have to actually get really good at repetition of failing and going back to the well. And something that really helped me was, so I was like, okay, I'm okay with failing. And then I'm like, I had to learn to allow my team to fail, right? And so it's like, but I had to learn how to allow me to fail first. And then with the clients, I always struggle because it's like, wait, they're paying me, so we need to be almost like perfect. And there's some language that I've learned with clients on this that's really helped me is when somebody says, hey, you guys missed the mark here. And it's like, hey, you know what? I really appreciate you pointing that out. This is a great learning opportunity, and we're going to be able to go to the next level for you now because we learned this. When you handle failing that way, it really helps the clients. It helps your team. And if all you're doing is getting on yourself, getting on your team, it's hard to grow your business that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So patience, failing, anything else?
Honestly, I think you have to have the vision, you have to have the goal, and you have to always be working toward it. But you also have to understand that you will never be done. It never ends. Like once you hit that goal, doesn't mean it's done. Doesn't mean it's over. Like now the goal is higher, and now the goal is higher, and now the goal is higher. So I think when people really set out to do this, they get discouraged because they're like, oh, I'm never there. I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not there. The fact is if you stop and you look back, you aren't just there. You've exceeded there a few times now, and you're just not at the next goal. So just because the finish line keeps moving doesn't mean you're failing or you're not there yet. So you have to learn to enjoy the process. You have to learn to enjoy the journey and not the end finish line.
That is so good. Yeah, the best framework I've ever heard on this one is Simon Sinek, the infinite game. And so he says in business, we're playing an infinite game, but in most of the time in sports or board games, we're playing a finite game. So you're working towards an end, and there's a finished score at the end, right? So if you and I play Monopoly right now, there would be a winner, there would be a loser, and we would agree on the rules. In business, it doesn't work that way. It's just survive and advance, right? And so you're just trying to keep the business alive, and it goes on forever. The game of business will be here long after we're gone. And so getting in the mental space that I'm playing this game for the long haul, and then what that does is it actually takes you out of this competitive, limited mindset where I'm competing against Brad for winning and losing, and I'm actually competing against myself. That's 100%. A totally different ball game than playing baseball.
Yes. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I remember when we first started out, speaking of competitors, I was always so afraid of my competitors. And then I don't know where it clicked, but finally I realized that they're not. I'm my own competitor. They're actually my friends. Like we can help each other out. I have gotten more work from other agencies, my competitors, than I have anywhere else. So they're not my enemy. They're my friend. So
yeah, that's an abundance mindset, right? That all these agencies can actually succeed, but you have to learn how to battle with yourself. That's where the real battle comes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome, Brad. Thank you so much for coming on. If someone wants to reach out and learn more about your agency and what you guys do, how can they find you?
Just go to liquisdigital.com, and we got everything there. We have a podcast. We got everything you would need to connect with us there.
Yeah, Brad has a lot of good tips on TikTok as well, and I've listened to your podcast. Is really good as well. I really appreciate all the things that you guys work through on there. So if you guys go check them out, I'm sure it will be a lot of help to your agency as you grow.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.